From the American Riviera in Santa Barbara, California, it's Ken Boxer Live with your host, Ken Boxer, and co-host, two-time Olympian Tai Babilonia. Please welcome Ken and Tai.
Wow, thank you so very much. Thank you. I have to tell you, let me introduce you to my co-host. Not only is she the two-time Olympian, but she's also five-time national champion, as well as the former world champion figure skater, Tai Babilonia.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
As always, you look ravishing
Do you
tonight.
love this? Wendy
Yes.
Foster.
It's beautiful.
And I had, there were three choices, two or three choices, and this was the first one I tried on, and I love it. You love it?
Yes,
you love it?
we
I
do.
love it. So
I
thank
love
you,
it too.
Wendy Foster.
All right. Well, it's going to be a serious show tonight. Tell our audience.
Oh my gosh, Ken, we are so honored to have in the studio tonight author Kim Goldman. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Kim Goldman.
Oh, yeah.
Ken Boxer Live, brought to you in part by DCH Lexus of Santa Barbara, providing Santa Barbarans and surrounding locations with prestigious luxury cars, SUVs, and hybrid vehicles. American Riviera Bank. Feel good about your bank. Wendy Foster, Santa Barbara and Montecito's premier clothing store. Now back to Ken Boxer Live.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. And we are back. With us tonight is Kim Goldman, whose brother Ron Goldman, as you may recall, was brutally murdered by O.J. Simpson 20 years ago. Kim's a public speaker, an author, an advocate, and mother. And although each of us recalls the Simpson murders and the resulting so-called trial of the century, Kim's life unwillingly and tragically has intertwined these events in the most personal way possible, the senseless murder of a precious loved one. Kim Goldman is our guest this evening, and she has authored a new book entitled Can't Forgive: My 20-Year Battle with O.J. Simpson. Let's welcome to our show, everybody, Kim Goldman. Thank you so much. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you,
Kim, why now the book? Why did you write it?
I was at a period of my life where it was time for me to kind of reclaim my independence and my identity, which got lost for such a long time. I was Ron's sister, Fred's daughter, my son Sam's mom, and I just didn't ever know who I was in all of this, and it just felt like it was time to spread my wings a little and let my voice be heard.
Why do you think, though, 20 years now, everyone's still interested in this trial? Even though it's been 20 years.
People are very vested. I mean, people really identified with our family, with Nicole's family. It was the first time that people in this country got a bird's eye view into what went on in our justice system. And I think people felt really curious about it, but then also really betrayed by it. And people are still so emotionally attached to every person involved and the verdict. And it's just been always very intimate to me, but I've been able to share that with the public, and that's been sometimes wonderful and sometimes really hard.
I've read your book. It's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
I really mean that. And was it cathartic for you to write that book?
Yeah, I love to write. I mean, when I was little, I always wanted to be an author, but I never thought there was any money in it. So I just used to write poems and short stories. But I love the process of writing. It was hard for me to go back and relive a couple of things, but I'm in such a stronger place now.
Nice.
So being able to look back and kind of reflect and move forward was really helpful.
I read in the book that you actually wanted to meet O.J. You wrote to him.
Did you write a letter to him?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest and bravest thing. I didn't really think it through, that if he would have granted me the opportunity to go visit him, what I would have done.
Right.
But just putting pen to paper, I didn't type it. I actually wrote it out on stationery and asked him if I could come visit him. I was tricking him into thinking that it was about closure, which I don't believe in that, but I really needed to see him behind the gate, behind the guards with the orange suit.
Right.
I needed to see him small and make him a little bit more manageable for me, because he'd taken up so much real estate in my brain.
Well, when did you first realize that, initially, did you think O.J. was the killer? And when did it turn for you, like, he's obviously the one who did it?
I mean, everything was kind of leading up to that in the early stages of the criminal case, but it really wasn't until the DNA portion was presented to the jury that I thought there's no way that it could be anybody else. I mean, every single piece of evidence pointed to him. It was 1 in 7 billion that it was anybody but him. Everything pointed, and at that point there was no turning back for me.
But was there anything in particular, any bit of evidence that
it was really just his blood, my brother's fibers, my brother's blood was where it shouldn't have been. I mean, we could always excuse away Nicole's because they had a relationship, but my brother's stuff was where it wasn't supposed to be if he wasn't the killer. So the blood trail, the blood of my brother's inside the killer's house and on the killer's socks, and again the fibers from the killer's shirt and his hat were on my brother's clothes, and couldn't be anybody else.
I can't even wrap my brain around what you went through and your family went through. We met Sam earlier. Have you shared everything with him? And he knows the details.
Sam's your son.
My Sam is my son. He's 10. From the time he was about 4, I mean, I've always talked about my brother. He's got a beautiful picture of him in his room. He knows Uncle Ron is not here. But it wasn't until he was about 4 or 5 that he started asking me more questions about why and where and what happened. And I was always very good to just answer yes and no and not answer more than what he was asking. And he asked me who the bad man was that hurt his Uncle Ron and how. And I said the bad man had a knife. And he said, and he stabbed him. He cut him, and I said yes. I didn't tell him until later that there was another person involved, until I felt like my son could understand the concept of hero, and that was when I got to share the heroic thing my brother did in the last minutes of his life.
We're going to see a clip. It's the clip of his acquittal. Is it still hard for you to watch? Or is it's okay?
It's like burned a place in my brain, so even if I don't watch it, I can still see it very vividly. And
I mean, America saw you, seeing you crying in the courtroom. That'll always be, in our hearts and our minds when we see it. Well, let's watch the clip. We'll come back right after this. Okay.
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least 1 crime of murder of the first degree and 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this 2nd day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please.
Our guest is Kim Goldman. Now, Kim, when you see that, can you lead us up to that day when you were going to the courtroom? And we saw your reaction, and God knows, our hearts felt for you. I can speak for almost everybody in the United States. We all became one with your family.
Well, the verdict was read the day after the jury actually came to the verdict, so we had to wait an entire day because they needed to prepare the city for what they thought was potentially going to be a repeat of the Rodney King riots and whatnot. So we waited all night, which was horrible, and I had a house full of people that decided what the verdict was going to be, and I basically locked myself in the closet because I couldn't hear. I just wasn't prepared. I mean, I was the one sitting in the courtroom every day, and I wasn't entirely convinced that the jury was going to come back with the verdict we wanted.
Why did you think that? What made you have the doubt?
Because 9 months of watching people, and you know, I got sucked into the defense's case every once in a while, and I thought, God, that kind of sounds plausible. And if you wanted it to be believable, you believed it, and that's what the jury did. I mean, they checked out. I could see them have complete apathy towards what was going on. Their bags were packed. They told you that when they were released from their duty, that they were done months before. They stopped listening.
I've heard that by one of the jurors. He said, we just wanted to go home.
We wanted to go home.
We wanted to go home.
I mean, 9 months of trial and 3 hours of jury deliberation.
I remember hearing one of the jurors saying when a reporter asked, well, what about the DNA? And the juror said, don't talk about DNA. I don't want to hear about DNA.
Well, you know, at that time, I mean, remember, it's 20 years ago. That was really the beginning of when DNA started being introduced to our trials. And, you know, poor Robin Cotton, she was a DNA expert. She was really very boring and monotone. Right. And, you know, one thing that we learned in the civil case is how to, and I don't mean this rudely, but how to dumb it down a little bit and make it a little bit more user-friendly for those of us that all failed science. I mean, you know, we really needed to understand what they were saying, and it was just too high-tech, and it was too outside of our reach in the criminal case,
Well, you were there, though, every day. What would, with hindsight, now I have 20 years of hindsight, what would you have done differently if you were
had
in
a
the
different
anything?
Criminal. I mean, I really think, I don't think that anything that they would have done differently would have made the difference in that case. There were mountains of evidence against him, and they still couldn't find him guilty. I don't think that they wanted to believe that it could be him. I think it was bigger than that. I think they wanted to send a message, a little bit of retaliation. I don't have any idea, but I just think they weren't going to do it.
Well, after the verdict, I read in your book that you went to the District Attorney Garcetti's office. What was that like in that room?
It was very somber. Everybody was crying. Gil was heartbroken, and he just looked at me and he apologized. I mean, everybody had tears in their eyes. Chris broke down, Darden. The Brown family left. I don't know where they disappeared to. So we hung and everybody just cried. It was so sad. And Chris, to this day, we're still very close, and he feels very much like he let our family down. And I don't believe that, but he carries a lot of guilt.
But you did take it to the next step, because in your book you said you didn't have a lot of say with the prosecution as to what what they can take in as evidence or not. But in the civil case, you were able to do that.
Yeah, the main difference, I think, for a lot of people that you don't understand is their criminal system is the state versus whoever the defendant is. So you really have no say. We were very lucky to even get seats in the courtroom. It's not very common that victims and their families even know what their rights are and how to demand seats and how to demand certain things. So for the civil case, it was the Goldman family that were able to file charges against him, a wrongful death suit, and so it was our case against him. We got to pick our attorneys. I sat in on the voir dire process for the jury. I participated in building the case because I had the benefit of the first trial. It was very empowering. It was very inspiring to be part of that.
Let's see the end result. Let's watch the victory.
Okay.
Let's
Yay, I'll watch that.
Kim Goldman.
A little over 2.5 years, and we finally have justice for Ron and Nicole. And it was done with honesty and dignity, complete truth, and our family is grateful for a verdict of responsibility, which is all we ever wanted. And we have it, thank God.
The jury sided with the plaintiffs on 8 counts. It was a unanimous decision with an $8.5 million message that O.J. Simpson must be held responsible for the deaths of Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman. The Brown and Goldman families wept, held each other, and hugged their attorneys. O.J. Simpson sat emotionless, staring straight ahead.
What an extraordinary honor and privilege it has been to represent this man and his family. They have conducted themselves with extraordinary grace and dignity throughout this entire unspeakable tragedy.
And though this verdict is a small victory, the families say no amount of money, no amount of justice will ever replace their loved ones.
I told Fred earlier, just a few moments ago, Ron would have been proud.
Ron is proud.
Ron is proud.
We did this for Ron. I want to go tell him.
That's going to be it.
And Kim Goldman's joining us. Kim, watching it, there's a little bit of, I can see you're teary-eyed when you see that still after all these years, but it's got to be, you must be happy when you see that.
Yeah, I mean, we really worked hard. It was important for us to have it in the books somewhere in our system that he was responsible for stabbing my brother and Nicole to death. It's all our system affords to us. I mean, people were very confused as to why we pursued the civil case. And my dad and I were just talking about it yesterday, actually, and I don't know I'm pretty sure we would not have gone through the civil case had we received the verdict we wanted to in the criminal case. But our system provides the opportunity and the avenue to pursue him civilly. And, the report was not accurate. Together, the verdict, the judgment was $33.5 million between the two families, between compensatory and punitive damages. And to date, our portion of that is worth well over $40 million, which he's paid us less than 1% of.
And in your book, you mentioned how difficult he hides the money.
Yeah, our system also allows for that. So
yeah.
He has a team of people that have protected all of his assets, so we can't touch anything.
Can you tell us more about the Ron Goldman Foundation?
Yeah, we started the Ron Goldman Foundation a handful of years ago, and it was really just to help other organizations that are already doing amazing work. Being a nonprofit, as I do in my daily life, we don't need any more nonprofit agencies. So we try to just help those that are already doing such great work in lobbying and activism for victims and survivors. So we try to partner people up with resources that they might need, and we just grant money when we can and when we have the ability to.
When looking back at going back to the trial, the first trial, your brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time. How did it come to be that he was the one that was taking the glasses off? Did you ever find out why Ron and not another person, or why didn't she ever go back or wait the next day to pick up the glasses?
I think it's just one of those things. When someone says, hey, I got a pair of glasses, I'll take them. I don't think it was anything manufactured. I don't think it was anything other than my brother was just passing through. He had plans with his buddy that night.
Okay.
And I think it was just, he's on his way and I'll drop him off, because it's a small town in Los Angeles, and they knew each other, and why not? I would have offered the same thing.
Are you still in touch with the Brown family?
No,
Are you?
not really. I mean, through social media sometimes, but our families were connected through a horrible tragedy, and that's pretty much where that relationship stays sacred.
Do you ever go by the area?
I've never been to Brentwood.
No.
Actually, that's a total lie. I had a blind date once that started to take me up the street into Brentwood, and when I realized where I was, I had a complete panic attack, and needless to say, that was the last date we had. Yeah.
And speaking of dates, though, I would lighten up the show a little bit. I had read also that you wouldn't date anyone who thought anything other than OJ was a murderer.
Yeah, I have a couple of deal breakers. That happens to be one. I don't care if the rest of the world has their opinion about him, but someone that I share space with, I don't need to have that be part of my. I already have it out there. I don't need it to be in my home. Yeah. So I did tell someone that they can't call me again when he told me he would go into a foursome and play golf with him. I said, that's it. I don't need any looky-loos. I mean, you have a public life, it's very private.
I understand
I have a family that I'm trying to keep close to me, and I never knew why people were knocking at my door and wanting to go out with me, and so I got very protective, and so those were a couple of my deal breakers.
So now we go to the third trial, where OJ actually gets convicted. Okay.
Let's watch that one. Yeah.
He gets convicted, and you heard about it how?
We were in the unfortunate situation of ending up with the If I Did It book, which the killer tried to publish, which was his so-called hypothetical of what happened the night that...
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
And we learned about that book from the National Enquirer, and we went quickly trying to shut that book down, and we were successful. It was the first time that Rupert Murdoch and HarperCollins and News Corp pulled a book off the shelves. It was 400,000. Yeah, that was a good one. So they yanked the book off the shelves, but in a weird twist of fate by our lovely justice system again, we ended up with the rights to the book because we were the biggest creditor. He owed us however much at that point, and we were able to levy on things of his future earnings. He filed bankruptcy. That book ended up in bankruptcy court, and the bankruptcy judge ordered our family to liquidate that asset, and so that all of the money that was made from that book would go to pay off his debt. which included our judgment. So we ended up with that ridiculous book, which after I read it as his confession. So we were happy to put that out there. But when we were publishing it, the day we were publishing it, he broke into a Vegas hotel room to get his memorabilia back so that we wouldn't.
And you must have,
get
what
it.
the hell's going on? It's round
Yeah,
three.
we were on live television. We were doing something, and the story broke, and my dad and I started laughing, and we couldn't help it. And then we saw him handcuffed.
Well,
and that was fantastic.
let's watch OJ.
Okay.
At sentencing.
District Court, Clark County, Nevada. The State of Nevada Plaintiff versus Orenthal James Simpson, Defendant. Case number C237890, Department 5. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit a crime. Guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit robbery. Guilty. Count 4, burglary while in possession of a deadly weapon. Guilty of burglary while in possession of a deadly weapon. Count 5, first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon. Bruce Fromong. Guilty of first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon. Count 6, first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon. Alfred Beardsley. Guilty of first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon. Count 7, robbery with use of a deadly weapon. Bruce Fromong. Guilty of robbery with use of a deadly weapon. Count 8, robbery with use of a deadly weapon. Alfred Beardsley. Guilty of robbery with use of a deadly weapon. Count 9, assault with a deadly weapon. Bruce Fromong. Guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. Count 10, assault with a deadly weapon. Alfred Beardsley. Guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. Count 11, coercion with use of a deadly weapon. Bruce Fromong. Alternative to count 5, guilty of coercion with use of a deadly weapon. Count 12, coercion with use of a deadly weapon. Alfred Beardsley. Alternative to count 6, guilty of coercion with use of a deadly weapon. Dated this 3rd day of October 2008, juror number 3, 4-person. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are those your verdicts as read? So say you one, so say you all, as to defendant Orenthal James Simpson.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Have a seat.
Kim, I'm supposed to be impartial in my position here, but I'm so glad that he is behind bars.
Well, I think for us, it was time. We gave him full permission when we acquitted him in the criminal case that he was above the law, and he continued to keep living his life that way. And finally, in Las Vegas, he was told he wasn't, and I'm okay with that.
Talk about the Kardashian factor. There was something about, you've heard this many times, I'm sure, the bag coming out of his home in the first few days. That what was that all about?
The bag, well, there's a couple versions of the story. The bag, people believe at the time he was walking away with a Louis Vuitton suit bag, and then there was another bag that disappeared too, and people believe that he was helping to dispose of something or other. A couple years ago, we were contacted by some member of the Kardashian family after Robert Kardashian died that there was a bag in his garage that had a note on it that said, "Please give this to the Goldmans when I die."
Did you ever get that?
We did not get the bag.
Do you know where it is?
Really?
It's still in their possession. When we arranged to have a drop, they didn't show up.
But you can still pursue that, or maybe
I don't really care, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't care.
We love your father.
Me too.
We see him, once in a while on the screen, and he's just in every. He's like your dad. He's like everybody's dad.
He's so
Somebody's
strong.
so protective.
I mean, you are so strong. It's just so inspiring, Kim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got lucky. I was raised by my father and my brother, and we were the tight little threesome growing up, and my dad just sacrificed and did everything he could to make sure that my brother and I had a good life, and he was the person that I confided everything in, and he annoys the bejesus out of me today because he calls me constantly, but I wouldn't have it any other way. He's on texting now, so that makes it much easier.
Right.
But,
and he's a grandfather.
He is a grandfather.
Right.
We have lots of grandkids in our family,
Right.
but he's the only family I have besides my son. And,
well, I love the
awesome.
story. If you can share it with us about how you were able to even get into the court case. I mean, in the last case with O.J. Simpson.
We, like everybody, we were part of the public lottery, and we had to wait in line. And
In Las
Vegas. In Las Vegas, excuse me. So we were there for the sentencing, and we waited in line, and people were given tickets, and it was like the golden ticket, and we did not receive one. And then the other member of the group that we were with had one and gave it to my dad. And my dad started crying, and I just wandered down the hallway. I was devastated. And then this woman walked up to me, and she tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, "Kim, I'm from your neighborhood, and I did
Oh
not
my
expect you to
gosh.
be here today, and you need this. And she handed me the ticket, and I broke down. I have no idea who this woman was, but I was so grateful.
my
And then we waited to go in, and all of the killers' families started going in, which were taking seats away from all of us that had the tickets. And then the door started to close, and the lady went like this to me, and I shoved my foot in the door, and I said, "Gotta get in there."
Right.
And she said, "Okay, like this." And then she snuck us in, and we sat down.
In-
I was not going to not get in that room.
In
Right.
about 30 seconds, tell us why you refer to OJ as the killer.
Because
and
he
you
stabbed
only
my brother
call-
to death, and
you
any
only
other
call him that.
thing.
You
would-
never say anything else. It's always the killer.
It is. It was really hard for me to even put his name on my book cover. He stabbed my brother to death, and that is the only courtesy that I want to offer him, is that he's a double homicidal murderer.
A very courageous woman.
Thank you.
We're delighted to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
very
That's
much.
very sweet.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Bravo. That's it for our show tonight. So be sure to tune in to our next show, as we have one of Ty's friends joining us, the former national world and Olympic skating champion, Tim Wood. This should be a very entertaining show, so you don't want to miss that. Well, that's it for now. So for our guest, Kim Goldman, and for my co-host, Tai Babilonia, and director George Montalvo, and the entire KBL crew, I'm Ken Boxer, saying that Ty and I will be seeing you next time on Ken Boxer Live. Good night, everybody.
Ken Boxer Live is brought to you by the following sponsors. DCH Lexus of Santa Barbara, providing Santa Barbarans and surrounding locations with prestigious luxury cars, SUVs, and hybrid vehicles. Palazzo Restaurant, where people don't leave hungry or thirsty. American Riviera Bank, feel good about your bank. Wendy Foster, Santa Barbara and Montecito's premier clothing store. Harborview Inn, welcome to Santa Barbara's premier 4-diamond luxury boutique oceanfront hotel. Via Rosa Inn, let us pamper you in international style. The Eagle Inn, a family-owned hotel near the beach in Santa Barbara. And by Taffy's Pizza, delivery, pickup, or dine in. Los Arroyos Mexican Restaurant, takeout. Santa Barbara Chicken Ranch, authentic Mexican style, mesquite barbecue. Sammy's Camera, new location at 530 State Street. Rubicon Theater Company, not your typical season, not your typical theater company. Summer Lee, makeup artist, stylist, and esthetician. Go Sunless, custom airbrush tanning in your home or at their location. Perfect Computers, your local computer experts since 1990. The Ken Boxer Live musical theme, composed and arranged by Mr. Michael J. Leslie.